Welcome to the Racing Pigeon International Podcast. We talk about everything racing pigeons, the latest news, results, events, and interviews from around the world.
Yes, I know these RPI podcasts are like buses. One doesn't come for ages and then a couple come at once. But it is what it is, and thank you for listening and watching. So, it's not actually racing pigeon related, this podcast. This is pigeon related though, however. When as you know, may know, I've been involved in racing pigeons since I was the age of 13. I'm 48 now, so 35 years. Keenly fascinated and interested in racing pigeons, and I've kept them off and on for all of those years. When I got back in after my false start in 2016, when I got back into pigeons, actually one of my son Zandy's first group of pigeons were some fancy pigeons that were being sold in Blackpool in 2019. Many of those pigeons he's still got now here. And a very good friend of mine locally keeps some of the best Iranian high flyers in the UK outside of Iran. His name's Persian Zamani. He's owner of a local great restaurant, one of my favourite restaurants here. I'm going off point, but he has some of the best Iranian high flyers there is. And I'm fascinated by these birds as well. And I guess you could say I love all pigeons. So I've had various things change on me in the last few months. Alexander Zandy's moved out. He's now living with his girlfriend. He's going to be racing from there. And ultimately, I've got the loft, which is a nice 36-foot loft, back to not having his pigeons in there and myself. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to turn one of the sections into what I call fancy pigeon loft. And I went to a show sale at Nottingham a couple of weeks ago, and I'd always seen the Pomeranian pouters, the white Pomeranian pouters. The guy called Andy Lowe used to have them at Blackpool show. I saw them in 2019. These pigeons always sat on top of the cages, and I was fascinated by them. I always said I want a pair. It took me a while to get a pair, but I went to pick up this pair. I came back with a few more pair of different pigeons as well. And I've got into fancy pigeons. I don't really know that much about what I'm talking about. I'm learning very fast. Needless to say, my passion will always be with racing pigeons. But these fancy pigeons, there's some real characters in there. I got a pair of German Medinas, and I went down to pick them up, and the guy had got this pigeon that was just more like a chicken or a turkey, and it's called a Strasser pigeon. Again, I'm learning. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing with the fancy pigeon world. And I ended up coming back with him and his mate, the Strasser pigeon. His name's Frank, after Frank Bruno, because he is a brute of a pigeon. He walks around like a turkey. And I'm fascinated by them. The tens, if not hundreds, of different varieties of fancy pigeons. All the different colours. The colours are called different things. I got some Birmingham rollers as well, which I'm going to get a little kit box for. And as I said, I go in there and I love these little characters. There's some real characters. Some of the Medinas I've got, they will play with you, fight with you. They're very calm. Most of them are very calm pigeons. And I think in the bigger context of pigeons as a hobby and a sport with regards to racing, fancy pigeons is not really something I got into, but I'm certainly getting interested in it. And I'm fascinated. I'm a member of some groups on Facebook now. I'm fascinated by it all. I'm learning fast, like I said. And I think there's a couple of things that racing people should look at. One, obviously some people keep a few as droppers. Two, people that can't race anymore, some of these fancy pigeons are great. They're relatively low maintenance. You don't have all of the expenses and time costs of training them. I think actually as an introduction to pigeons as well, some of these fancy pigeons are great little pigeons to introduce people to pigeons. And it's just fascinating. So Yeah, I'm going on the 18th. There's another show and sale on the 18th in Nottingham. There's one up in Manchester on the 2nd of April I'm going to nip up to as well. And I'm actually really enjoying learning about this. I'm going to put some photos up of the different variety of pigeons that I've got. These Pomeranian pouters, the pure whites, are stunning. Actually, I've got a Dutch cropper pigeon as well, which is even bigger than the Pomeranian pouter. But the king of the loft is Mr. Frank. Frank is a Strasser pigeon. Again, I'd never heard of these pigeons until I saw them in the loft. He walks around like a duck. He is a big boy, and his mate, his hen, is not that much smaller as well. And I just think it's been eye-opening to me. I've joined the NPA, National Pigeon Association, to be able to get the rings, which means I get the magazine. It's a whole new field opened up to me for pigeons, and somebody that's, like I said, been in it for 35 years and never really took much notice of fancy pigeons. People should. People listening to this podcast, there are some fascinating fancy pigeons out there. You can show them as well, of course, which is something people do a lot. My friend Perchman, he's going to be getting a few pair of Iranian high flies to me, and those birds fly higher where they're like pinpricks. So I've got a variety. I have noticed that a lot of people only specialise in one or two different types of fancy pigeons. I've gone for the kind of different varieties type at the moment because I like the variety in there. Maybe one day I'll think, I really like this type or that type, but for now I'm enjoying the variety and the characters that are in the loft. And I think people should look at them more. And if you're listening to this and you're a racing person, don't, like I did for years, not really take notice. There's some amazing pigeons. Some of them are quite hard to breed from what I've been told. But if you've got racers, you can float the eggs. Like these Pomeranian pouters are really hard to breed because they break the eggs and what have you. But you can float them under your racers. Well worth looking at. Fascinating for me. Hope you've enjoyed this podcast episode. Catch you soon.
You've been listening to the RPI Podcast. Check out more episodes at podcast.racingpigeoninternational.com.